and Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm your host, Greg Oram, and joining me for this one, I am delighted to be joined by Mark Turner and Ross Taylor. Forest have just slumped to a 2-0 home defeat to Brighton, a really disappointing one, especially after the optimism we've been building in recent weeks. It was a flat, disjointed display. We struggled to create, and Brighton punished the moments we switched off. We're going to dive into all of that, the key moments, the concerns, and where Forest go from here. It wasn't pretty, but we'll unpack it properly. So let's get into it. Regulars know that I normally have an intro all lined up and edited together, but when you lose, it's not much fun. So we'll just rely on the Forest faithful to cheer us along a little bit. Ross over in Texas, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, Greg.
Excellent, good to have you with us. And Mark's with us as well. You okay, Mark?
I am okay. Yeah, I'm in Colorado, so I'm a neighbour to Ross out here in the States.
A couple of our Forest supporting expats joining us for this one. No Richard, unfortunately, feeling a little bit under the weather. We wish you well and hopefully back with us very soon. All right, so let's get straight into it. We're going to review the match and look back on the defeat for Forest. Let's look at team then. I mean, we always, in the preview shows, Ross, try and piece together what we think it might be or what we would do. One or two of us thought it would go unchanged from the team against Liverpool. And it effectively was unchanged, albeit for the enforced switch with no Morato coming in. Morgan Gibbs-White back in the starting 11, having missed out in midweek, following a little bit of a sore back. You quite happy with that team? Was there anyone that you wanted to see start? And how did you think the game unfolded overall?
Yeah, I think the key things to start with was obviously when you're absent of Murillo, is it going to work with a 4 with Morata and Milenkovic at the back? And obviously, time told in terms of what happened there. And I also think the other key consideration was whether Omari Hutchinson had kind of earned himself a start. And I know a lot of the chat in our group chat was around whether we should be a bit more front-footed with Hutchinson at home. And I think there was a strong case for that once he had his cameo in the second half. I personally felt like the Dominguez, shift in the first half is fine, but I could also recognise that you do that away from home against Liverpool. You don't necessarily have to do it at home against Brighton, and I think they were a bit more front-footed, generally speaking, in the wings, and we could have been that dominant force, and kind of our selections meant that we weren't.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? I mean, I've listened to Sean Dyche post-match. Maybe you have as well. It was a pretty stale first 20 minutes from Forest. What did you make of it overall, though?
Well, as Sean Dyche said in that post-match, he wasn't going to change a winning team. When you win 3-0 at Anfield, it ain't broke, right? So I was happy with the lineup. Obviously, the omission of Murillo was concerning, and that came to fruition in the first 10, 15 minutes. Minter's pace had us at 6s and 7s. And I think in the absence of Murillo, we don't really have any blistering pace at the back. Ola Aina is pretty nippy, but obviously he hasn't featured for a while. Nico Williams is no slouch. But again, we're talking about next level pace, almost a Langer-esque pace here. And I understood why we started Dominguez on that side of the field to try and counteract that. But clearly it didn't fathom out that way, which is unfortunate. I love Omari Hutchinson. I'd like to see him start. But I don't hate that he didn't start today. I understand what Dyche was trying to do there.
One or two of you watching with us at the moment in the live, so please do drop yourselves into the chat and we'll give the shout outs that we can. And if you're listening later on via Apple or Spotify or Pocket Cast or something else, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope that you'll like and subscribe. We're trying to get our numbers up as usual. So please do hit the like button. Please do subscribe. And if you fancy a 5-star review, get your writing pen out or your keyboard at least, and let's see what you got to say in a 5-star variety, of course. I was thinking that it might be a little bit flat after the big 3-0 win at Liverpool, Ross. And then, of course, there was the midweek game as well. And when you kind of have a Sunday match now, all eyes are on you thinking, how are you going to perform following the Thursday? But there were changes made in the week. So I don't really think we can blame too much on fatigue. I really don't kind of buy into that. But that first 20 minutes, as I've just mentioned, was pretty bad from Forest. And Brighton looked like they were going to score, with ease at times. Sells looked quite sharp, which was quite encouraging. I mean, what can you put that down to? Obviously, we don't know the reasons why. But, is it just, a faltering start, a bad day at the office, players just not quite at it? Is there anything that we can kind of put our finger on in that respect?
I mean, first of all, I would give Brighton a bit of credit. They came out pretty front-footed. I think they had 17 attempts on goal all told. So that was pretty stark. Those first 15 to 20 minutes were kind of awkward for us all to watch. They were tricky. They were fast. They had good overloads. They gambled runners. And they exposed the fact that, we are a little bit slower at the back without Murillo. And I think we struggled to really kind of just adjust to that. So I think, Brighton certainly weren't the team that we saw last year, as per the 9-goal swing, but they certainly sorted themselves out. They had a proper midfield. They didn't have that last year. And they dominated the ball in the centre, and they made the most of their willing runners in those kind of channels between the centre-back and the full-back. So I think a lot of it was on them. And I think after 20 minutes, I would have happily taken being 1-0 down at half-time. Now, after 43 minutes, I was frustrated that we were 1-0 down at half-time, because it felt like we'd weathered the storm and somehow gotten back into it. But generally speaking, I think they were kind of worthy of their points based upon the way they dominated from the get-go.
We know last year was the 7-0 defeat to them, and their manager kind of went away, licked his wounds a little bit, called it his worst ever defeat as a manager. And obviously with the scoreline like that, it's not difficult to see that. So I can imagine that he would have been into the players, not just in this week, but maybe a little bit ahead of that, saying, look, this is the one. We're not going to go there, and we're not going to let them dominate us like they did last year. And so he would have been really kind of focusing his players on making sure they came out the traps lively and fast. And that's what they did, Mark, didn't they? So that first 20 minutes, as we've said, was pretty bad from a Forest point of view, but we didn't concede. You ride a storm sometimes, you ride your luck. It wasn't like we had like shots being cleared off the line left, right, and centre. There was one or two moments like that. But we rode our luck. And then we did, as Ross said, kind of come into the game. And slowly but surely started to get a bit of a foothold. It was the Dominguez cross, I think, that was probably the best moment in our first half. Dominguez crossing for Morgan Gibbs-White just to kind of slice the ball in a scissor kick motion, putting it wide of the post. But as we kind of grew into the half, things settled down. How are you feeling as we approached half-time before they scored, Mark?
Yeah, the Morgan Gibbs-White attempt, had that gone in, that would have been maybe a contender for goal of the season. That was shaping up to look very pretty indeed. But it wasn't the only opportunity in that first half. Sangare had a sight on goal. Jesus had a sight on goal. As Ross mentioned, we really started to grow into the game. I will say, I was looking at the on-screen clock as Forest were getting battered in that first. It felt like 30 minutes. It wasn't. It was 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Brighton quite literally could have been 3-0 up within 10 minutes and 20 seconds. So the fact that we were riding our luck, able to hang in there and then turn things, I wouldn't say turn things around necessarily, but start to turn the tide in the first half was positive, of course. It would have been nice if we could have converted one of those chances. And then to Ross's point, frustrating to see Brighton score. Really, what was a highly defendable goal. I kind of watched the goal over a few times, Greg, trying to determine where the breakdown was. And obviously it was a long ball out from the goalkeeper who straight up almost to the halfway line, pinged it out to the right-hand side. And I was thinking, well, perhaps that's where the breakdown is. And I paused the game to look at kind of positional situations. Anderson had tucked over to try and provide a little extra cover. Morgan Gibbs-White was a little higher up the field, which was okay because, again, it had come from their goalkeeper, and I think he had pressed up. And Forest were in the process of pressing when the goalkeeper got the ball back and then delivered out to the right. So everything looked okay. Sangare looked great. He was in a holding position directly ahead of the two centre-backs. But we had two Brighton players coming on. and I hate to name check people, but you kind of got to be honest. Like, how did a Brighton player find themselves wide open in the middle of our box? And it was actually Sangare who drifted. He got drawn to the ball. So if you go back and watch it again, he was ball watching. He got sucked into the play. So now we have Sangare and Anderson out there with Dominguez and Williams, right? And all of a sudden, the two Brighton players who Sangare had the correct side of him, he was goal side of them, had now drifted into that space behind. Morata was facing the play, as he should have been. Milenkovic could see the two of them coming, but he obviously can't cover two. The ball obviously was a little fortuitous, but once it had made its way into the most dangerous part of the field, the centre of our goal mouth, that's a problem. That's an issue, and there were players there obviously to benefit from that. So, but it was little moments like that, I think, throughout the half, and I think Brighton did a really good job of punishing us, at least in creating chances. Clearly, they didn't convert any until late in the half, but it was men against boys there for a while. Their passing was crisp, their movement was good, their shape was good. When we had the ball on the few occasions we did early doors, their discipline was good. Like, they got back behind the ball very, very quickly. They clearly were up for it today. They did not want to see anything like a follow-up to what happened last year, and they were desperate to come away with something today. So,
yeah, and when that ball came across as well, I think if you look at it again, it took a little bit of a funny deflection off of Nico Williams' toe, and I think that kind of diverted it into the path of the keeper. And, he was not going to miss from there. So I was feeling very frustrated going in 1-0.
Two players open with one centre back in the heart of your defence, do you?
No. It was a soft goal in many ways to concede, but I guess you might say maybe on the balance of the first half, Brighton deserved their lead. Although, like I said, I thought after 20 minutes we came into it quite strongly, and some would argue it kind of evened the half out. But let's kind of stick on the first half before we move on. I want to kind of maybe have a look at one or two of our players. Dan Ndoye, Ross. Now, I didn't think he had his best game again today. I thought he's been a player that has kind of survived so far in his Forest career on having good moments in games without having long spells in games of being really good and really strong, like continuous. I think he's had good moments that have benefited the team, but today, the moments that he had, things weren't coming off. He was making the wrong pass, or he was making the wrong move and carrying the ball out of play, getting caught offside quite lazily. What have you made of him? Because our wing options have been quite limited with no Bakwa due to injury. Hudson-Odoi was out injured for a game or two, and Doy's had to carry a lot of the workload. And obviously, Hutch can't play in Europe as well. Obviously, we'll talk about Hutch in a moment. But Dan Ndoye, where are you on him and his performances so far, and today especially?
Yeah, I mean, I'm as frustrated as I am by his inconsistency. I mean, it goes a bit hot and cold. I do think that there's a degree of sort of maturity about him that gets in the nod. I think sort of structurally and positionally, it was less evident today, but I feel like he protects the fullback a little bit better maybe than others. I don't know enough about Savona and Ndoye's past Italian life, but you have to assume that they can integrate a little bit, having both spoken Italian. So maybe there's a little bit there in terms of the chemistry. I think the difficulty for Ndoye is twofold. One is he is not a like-for-like replacement for Elanga. So just by definition on pace, we're not getting the same player. And then when you've got a player like Hutchinson, who's quite clearly got trickiness and he has been game-changing, then the spotlight is on him all the more. And today, I think the sort of more defensive, responsible shift, he was weak. He was weak today. And therefore, he just didn't kind of play to those strengths that gave him the nod.
What about you, Mark? You got anything you want to chip in on for Dan Ndoye?
I think Dan Ndoye is exactly what we see. Like, what you see is what you get. I don't think there's anything more to come from him. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think he's an exceptional player. I think he's kind of a 6 to a 7 across the board. I think he's quick, but I don't think he's blistering. I think he's tricky, but I don't think he's like overly technical. I think he can do a defensive shift, but it's hit and miss, to Ross's point. And I think as far as fans, we just have to accept that. I think this is as good as it gets with Dan Ndoye. I think he's a really good squad player. I don't think he's necessarily the long-term answer out there.
Are we using him in the right way, do you think? And what I mean by that is he better on the right? Is he better on the left? Is he maybe better coming in, tucked in behind the striker? because he seems to always go away on international duty and get a goal for Switzerland, and so on. So, and I've seen him have some good moments in terms of tracking back defensively, and not so much today. But I mean, can either of you do either of you have a view on that? Are we using him properly, Mark?
I don't know that I really have a strong view on that, because again, I just think you have to look at the limitations of the player. It's interesting, isn't it? When you're looking at offensive players, or you're looking at players who are more appear to be more technical in nature. When you're looking at the Morgan Gibbs-Whites, when you're looking at the Callum Hudson-Odois, when you're looking at the Indoys, I think we tend to gauge their effectiveness in the game or give them a degree of latitude that we wouldn't extend to other players who don't have that kind of vav-avim about them. Like Ryan Yates is a good example. Like, it takes nothing for segments of our fan group to go to town on Ryan Yates. But yet we seem to extend additional latitude to those other flashier players because we know that they can do something kind of remarkable out of nowhere. So where you're playing Ndoye, I don't know that makes a huge amount of difference, Greg, because I think we're seeing, again, I guess just restate what I said earlier, I think we're seeing the best of him already. I think this is as good as it gets. And I'm not being critical. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good squad player. I just don't think he's necessarily ever going to tear up the Premier League, regardless of where you play him.
Yeah. Okay. The other player I want to have a chat about is Igor Jesus, who I think was very good against Liverpool. He leads the line really well whenever he plays, but he just doesn't seem like he's going to be the prolific striker, goal scorer, Ross, that we need. And we are missing Chris Wood. That's an obvious thing to say. And Igor's coming in and leading the line well. He's had that obvious near miss of his first Premier League goal with the handball against Liverpool that never should have been. And today he had a shot saved that we'll talk about later as well. Where are you on Igor Jesus? Has he got a future at Forest? Because I'm looking at this squad thinking we might need to sign 2 or 3 strikers.
I'm not so sure I'd go that far, but I mean, I like him. I think, what's it, price per pound? He's pretty good value, right? I mean, he's been a good bit of business. I think of our more marquee signings this summer. I mean, there's less question marks around him. I like the way he links the play. He had some moments of strength today that were kind of surprising. I think had that goal against Liverpool counted, and maybe we'd been looking at a different player as well. I was surprised he hadn't scored already in the Premier League, but I know he's kind of only had cameos. He had the crossbar earlier in the season at home, memory serves me rightly, and pretty unlucky on that sort of stretch chance. So I feel like he's done a really good job in the absence of Wood. It's not like we've suddenly become this high creativity team. So we're always going to be about goal scoring efficiency. And I've not been too alarmed by his contribution because, it's been limited in terms of the actual goal scoring chances he's had. I think he's got a role for us, certainly while Wood's absent.
Looks like we've been relying, Mark, on Morgan Gibbs-White to score the goals. He scored 3 in a row in the Premier League. He nearly scored that goal today. Where are you with Igor Jesus? Is he going to notch just a few goals this season? Could you see him getting to maybe, if Wood doesn't come back, what are we looking at? 5 goals this season, 10 at best? Yeah,
it's really challenging. I mean, I'm going to echo everything that Ross says. I also like Jesus as well. And I think for the price that we got him at, that's, again, another good squad player. I feel so bad for him because strikers obviously live and die by the goals that they score or the chances that they miss. And, he has really struggled in the Premier League. Obviously, he hasn't registered a Premier League goal yet. And I feel so bad for him whenever he gets subbed off around the 60, 75-minute mark. And all I can think is, if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, there goes another game where I didn't score a goal. We're getting up on almost halfway through the season now. We're a month away from being about halfway through the season, and he still hasn't registered a league goal. So I really do feel bad for him. I have a tendency also, though, Greg, to have sympathy for your position in that I think we do need a bagsman. We do need somebody who shows up with that confidence, who's been there, seen it, done it, who knows what to do, when backs are against the wall, a Chris Wood type. And I think we might need another striker in the rotation here. I don't think we necessarily need 2 or 3. but I think we could be in the market for one in January.
I think the reason why I said 2 or 3, which might sound a lot, I guess I was probably thinking more towards the end of the season. Maybe Wood's going to depart. Maybe Kalima window hasn't worked out and he departs. And then you're left with Igor Jesus. And then you really are looking at maybe a couple of strikers needing to come in. And you want someone who as you've just said, is a bagsman, who is going to be nailed on to score your goals week in, week out. I look at Brentford, Igor Thiago, their striker. He came in at the start of last season and got injured when Ivan Toney kind of left the club, and it was really on Wissa and Mbeumo to kind of step up and serve Brentford really well. And this Igor Thiago was kind of like out for so long that it was only this season that he came into their team, and he's scored sort of 10, 11 goals now. A couple of penalties, sure, but you still got to score them. He looks like he's taking a claim for the number 9 shirt, I think, for Brazil as well. So, we need someone who's going to be able to come in and score goals in the absence of Chris Wood. It's all well and good saying he's a good squad player, and that's as may be. We need that striker who's going to score. One year went through a patch of scoring goals, and then his form fell off. It's like we are just kind of like hoping for a goal from him to kind of kickstart his career, and I hope it happens. But I really like him as well. Don't get me wrong, I really like him as well. I think he offers a lot, but I'm just a bit worried that for whatever it is, he just hasn't got what it takes in the Premier League, that what we need. All right, okay.
I want he's going to be off to AFCON as well, so that's a huge loss.
Well, is he? Is he going to get picked? Who knows? Jackie Howarth is with us in the comments. Hello, Jackie. She says, hello, boys. Hello, Jackie. Brighton, she says, were at their best, and unfortunately, we weren't on this occasion. Colo says, I was confident we wouldn't lose until I realised Murillo wasn't starting. Yeah, Murillo, missing from our team. He offers so much at the back. And as I was saying to Ross off air as well, I think, in an attacking sense, when we're on the front foot, Murillo is an outlet. He's got vision. He can pick out a really good pass. He offers us something different. It was good to see him playing at left back in the week. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe that kind of level of running up and down and doing the work of a left back was what put strain on his hamstring. So left out as a precaution. We're hopeful that nothing serious has happened or will happen. We hope to see him back on Wednesday. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the second half.
This episode of Talking Reds is brought to you by The Cheese Trader. If you love proper cheese and you love Nottingham Forest, then this is the place for you. From rich, creamy blues to powerful charcoal cheddar, The Cheese Trader has the flavour to match every moment of the season. Whether you're celebrating a big win or drowning your sorrows after a tough loss, use the code Talking Reds for 10% off every order. The Cheese Trader on Grape Lane in York, owned by Forest fan Stu Freestow. Proper cheese, proper passion. Find them online today and join the cheese revolution.
Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader. All the details are in the bio. Just also, I will mention that we are giving away a Nottingham Forest shirt. Recently, we had an episode with that young man on screen, Mark Turner. Yes. And so the question is related to that episode. On the one with Mark Turner, which player from Forest's history did Mark say he would want on the current team? Now, we've had some wrong answers, so be careful. You might think you know, but go and double check the one with Mark Turner. Go to the lightning round. Find Richard asking Mark the question, which player from Forest history would you want on the current team? And Mark makes a very specific answer about a very specific player. We want you to name that player. Send us the answer on an email to talkingredspod@gmail.com. You can only enter via email. You can only enter once. Answers via email to talkingredspod@gmail.com.
Hey, Ross, it's Jean-Claude Dashville.
Yeah.
You're going to give it away. It's not Jean-Claude Dashville for those of you that are getting a little bit confused. Right, okay, second half. We saw the changes immediately with Hutch coming on and Callum Hudson-Odoi coming on, Dominguez off and Doy off. So he was going all out. We were 1-0 down. You happy with those changes, Ross? Because look, Hutch has been the super sub in the last couple of games or so. And listen, we all saw the game. I thought he was going to do it again because when he came on, he was a live wire, wasn't he?
Yeah, and for the reasons I mentioned before, there was a case that he could have started off the back of, his performances in turning games in the past. And I think, to be fair to Dyche, he made an early call. It could have reasonably been made at 60 minutes versus just after halftime, or was it actually at halftime? So I think general consensus was that there were fair changes, and when Hutchinson came on, he's an exciting player. Like you could see he had the fullback on his heels a couple of times. He can go both ways, tricky, jinky, and I think he created arguably our best chance since Jesus for the game. And had we scored that, then we could have got the momentum back. Leveled up. Had the home crowd behind us. Could have gone on to win it. But I think those are the right changes. And to be fair to Dyche, they were pretty proactive.
Yeah, very proactive. I mean, Hutch has been pushing for a start. Lots of people, Mark, asking why Hutch wasn't starting today. I could see it. I could see that maybe Dyche was saying to him, look, give me another one of those off the bench. I need to have a weapon off the bench. But for me, I think he's now nailed on to start away at Wolves on Wednesday night. And as Ross touched on, it was that pass. I mean, Sells had come out of his goal, launched a lovely pass down to the flank, and Hutch has got that pace and that trickery, and he took it to the byline, cut it back for Igor Jesus, first time hit, and Verbruggen stopped with his heel, and I thought, that was a really good opportunity. What have you made of Hutch since he's kind of burst into life? Do you agree with me? Is it time to start him on Wednesday night?
Well, I love what Sean Dyche had to say post-match. It always cracks me up when managers use this old-school vernacular. He said, put the two wingers out there now. I just want them to ask questions. They have to be asking questions of the fullbacks. I just love the idea of Callum Hudson-Odoi out there being like, what do you get if you mix blue and orange? What's 24 times 17? What's the capital of Peru? Having his fullback be like, whoa. Let's stop messing around. Callum Hudson-Odoi and Hutch are our wingers. That's it. End of story. Okay, everyone else needs to make their way to the bench, and let's let those tricky speedsters do their thing against Wolves. To Ross's point, Hutch has got a little pace, but you know what I like about him? He's not an Alanga. He's not like flat track bully, 50 yards. He's going to continue to increase the gap between him and his chasing defender. He's the kind of player who has that burst of pace over 5, 6, 8, 10 yards maybe. And so because he can go either way, if he gets that 1 foot on you, you're done. You're baked. He'll either get a shot off, he'll get a cross in. As you mentioned, Greg, the ball into Jesus today, that should have been a goal. I like him a lot. I don't know what else he has to prove. I don't understand people who are saying, well, he needs to defend. Does he? Explain to me how well Alanga defended last year. He did a shift, but really, were we looking at Alanga to get back there and batten down the hatches? I want them going the other way. I want their fullbacks worried about us rather than the other way around. So, yeah, absolutely. Callum Hudson-Odoi and Hutch starting against Wolves, please.
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that they've handled him has been pretty good since the Dyche and his staff came in, because he must have been feeling really despondent with having been left out of the Europa squad, wasn't getting a look in, wasn't getting any minutes. So, they've managed him well. He's a young player still. He's been reminded that he's got a lot to learn and he's going to have his chance. And I think his chance will come on Wednesday. But the second half in total, guys, was so much better, wasn't it? I mean, I actually came away thinking, you know what, we really went for it in the second half. We made some good opportunities. We were unlucky, up until the Morato era for their second. I still kept thinking, we can get the equaliser. There was going to be 6 or 7 minutes added on, and so on. And so it was the killer, wasn't it, Ross, when Morato, who has been good when he's played this season, but today just seemed like that there was an error coming, and he tries to head it back to Sales, and then their guy pokes it in, and the game's dead. But were you overall quite happy with how we did in the second half, in spite of the result?
Yeah, I mean, the second half, we stuck in it, and as I said earlier, if we'd have grabbed that goal, I think we could have gone and kicked on and won. But yeah, that frustration with Morato is what it is. I mean, again, as Mark's mentioned, I think we know what we've got. I think he's a pretty limited central defender. I think Sangari's a pretty limited central midfielder. Like, I think we just know what we got there. When Morato starts without Murillo, I do think we have a pace issue at the back. And, you know, he had a run or was nearly dispossessed in the first half when it was, you know, gave us all a little bit of a nosebleed. I think he could have done better with the way he cleared the ball at the end to keep us in the game. And, you know, he's resolute but limited, as I say. And I think ultimately you either have to play as a 3 with Morato in the team, or you play him with Murillo. But when it's the two of them at the back, I'm always a little bit nervous. And I think we just have to kind of recognise that. And unfortunately, Morato time isn't as synonymous with the security that it was last season.
Like I say, I think he has been pretty good when he's been on the field this season, without being, you know, amazing. But he's looked more assured, Mark, I think. But we've brought in cover in terms of Jair Cunha. Andrew's with us in the comments. He says, Morato begs the question, what's happened to Jair Cunha? Why isn't he playing even on the bench? He was on the bench today. I liked what I saw from Jair Cunha in the defeat away at Newcastle. I thought he looked pretty good. And I think there was another game, can't quite put my finger on it. It might have been Swansea when he played or came off the bench. And I thought he looked quite good. What have you made in fleeting glances of Jair Cunha? Would you like to see him perhaps being given an opportunity as the backup centre-back instead of Morato? Or are you quite happy with Morato?
Way to stick the landing there, Greg.
That's the hospital pass, that was.
Yeah. Look, Morato is just incredibly limited. Again, I feel like I'm just echoing everything that Ross is saying here, but he's a blunt instrument. He is. Like, he'll put his body on the line. He's physical, overly physical on occasion, and he gets away with it. But, you know, he doesn't have the positional awareness that Milenkovic has. He certainly doesn't have the experience that Milenkovic has. He doesn't have the strength in the air despite his size. He doesn't have the pace that Murillo has. He doesn't have the ability to put his body in front of the ball from, you know, obscure angles and unlikely circus situations like Murillo has. He's just very, very limited. He's essentially a brute. And I don't hate that. That's okay. Again, that's a great thing to have in the squad. But to start him in a back 4 does make me very nervous. I'd like to see Cunha get more time. I don't know, maybe this is a ridiculous thing to say, but be interesting to see what your guys' take on this is. I wouldn't hate seeing Zach Abbott in there. Zach Abbott is by trade a centre-back, and how is he ever going to learn the position if he only gets 10 minutes here or there, or the odd game here or there playing at fullback? Like, I'd rather give Abbott...
Big step up, isn't it? It's a Prem though, Mark. It's a big step up.
It is, but I'd rather give him the time and develop his game than give those minutes to Morato. You got to think about Michael Dawson when he came into the Forest team. Very wet behind the ears, very green. Has a tendency to make a couple of mistakes, but then he kind of grew into it and became one of the best centre-backs that's ever worn Garibaldi. So, I mean, you've got to pick and choose the games, right? I'm not going to start Zach Abbott alongside Milenkovic or any other central defender at the club when Arsenal come to town. But I don't know, maybe there's a case for that. But Morato always has a mistake in him, at least one, every game. And that situation was just a comedy of errors. The ball should have been cleared into Rosed. It was Vicario-esque, right? We heard the commentators saying that after the Tottenham match. Like, why didn't Vicario put that ball up out the stadium even? And Morato should have done likewise. I know one of the things that really jumped out at me today, Greg, when you talk about the second half and the improvement, is when Forest are on fire, when we really have flipped the switch and we're looking good and we're looking like we're going to take all 3 points, and when players show up in the box en masse. We didn't see that hardly at all in the first half and didn't see enough of it in the second half. We talk about Jesus and his limitations, or the fact he hasn't gotten a goal yet, all of which deserves airtime. But when you look at the attacks and you look at the number of bodies that Brighton got quickly behind the ball, and you look at the cavalry for Forest, where was it? I didn't see 4, 5, 6 red shirts crashing the box. I saw a man on the ball looking for some support and 1 or 2 of his teammates showing up late. And so you can say, well, that's fatigue. You could say, well, that was to do with, the speed of transition. That's all very situational. But I saw that too much in today's game. And I think when Forest do get forward, as a unit, as opposed to in ones and twos, that's when we see the best of us.
Cali Mwendo is a player that we signed in the summer, one of the 13, who, like McAtee, like one or two others, Jekunya, has had very limited game time. And so on Thursday, he comes into the starting 11 and gets his goal and probably played his best match without being dazzling, but he looked sharper, I thought, on Thursday night. He looked like he was linking up better, looked like he fitted better, and he got his goal. He had to be there, had to be alive to the keeper saving Yates' header. And the job of a striker is to do that, and he put the ball in the back of the net. And so I was asking the question to the guys on the previous show about whether Cali Mwendo now has elevated himself in terms of thinking, in terms of game time off the bench. One or two thought maybe yes, one or two thought maybe no. But sure enough, he does come off the bench today. And I would have liked to have seen him come on and play alongside Igor Jesus, because we talked about Cali Mwendo being a player who is better in a front two, with maybe another striker next to him. So I was a little bit disappointed to see Igor Jesus go off. I thought maybe take Sangare off and bring Cali Mwendo off, and let's maybe go 4-4-2 or something, and just kind of maybe attack Brighton in that fashion. But it wasn't to be. What have you made of Cali Mwendo, Ross? I mean, is there anything that you've seen that you think, yeah, there's a player there, with something to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm less jazzed by him than Richard is. I know Richard has kind of defended him a little bit preemptively. I think of our summer signings, I'm just a bit meh on him right now. I wish I could find a better word than meh. I mean, I think to your point, you have to try and design around him a little bit. And I think in that instance where you're goal down, would you be looking at actually allowing for someone to link with him? And I think Jesus and Cali Mwendo playing together, it would have probably given us a bit more of an option. But then you'd have been making trade-offs in other areas. So yeah, I think jury's out for me a little bit on him. I think the physicality of the Premier League again is always going to be limiting for him. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of Eddie Nketiah, like just the physicality, that he's nimble, but sort of poacher-esque, good manoeuvring, but just doesn't. But he's always going to have to be sort of shielded a little bit, in the Premier League, and especially. And let's bear in mind, I'm 6'5". Duncan Van Hecker are massive. I mean, they're just absolute beasts at the back in Brighton. So if you're not playing to his strengths on the shoulder, and then he's on a bit of a hiding to nothing. So long ramble, jury's out.
No, not at all. Not much of a ramble at all. Wood's out, and Wandy's on the missing list again, Mark. So Cali Mwendo is the backup striker. It's about time we did see more of him, I think, don't you?
I don't know in the history of Nottingham Forest podcasts if Jean-Claude Darcheville's name has ever been mentioned twice in an episode. But now I've invoked the name initially, I'm going to revisit it. I think Cali Mwendo has shades.
You know what? I can see exactly what you mean as well. It's the build as well is quite
yes. Similar. It is. It's the build.
He's got the backside and the thighs of Jean-Claude Darcheville.
Yes. It's the build. It's the pace. It's a little bit the way he moves. But again, I feel like it's getting a little tired of me saying, I'm just going to agree with Ross, but I have to +1 everything he said again, because I think he's absolutely right. I think there is a case to be made for having having Cali Mwendo. I don't know, Ross. I mean, you're 6'5", mate. We can punt it up to you, but
I don't know you were 6'5". I mean, obviously, it's not. We don't get each other's stats when we come on the episode. There's no reason why I would know, But 6'5", obviously we can't tell. But we need to put together a Talking Reds 5-a-side team. You can play centre back.
I think the 79 in Ross's handle might be his FIFA card score.
Oh, no, it's a very limiting factor of my age, but of my year of birth. But it was a good year, as we all know. But yeah, I'll say Darcheville again, because he was a highlight of a weak season. So maybe Cali Mwendo would be a highlight of a weak season.
To your point again, if you bring him on alongside Jesus, you do have to give something up somewhere else, right? Because you're trying to accommodate a shift in formation and really a way of playing that we don't ordinarily adopt, which is going to be trying to get the ball quickly up to Jesus, have Darcheville run off. For now on, Cali Mwendo is getting known as Darcheville. But having him running off Jesus, I think it's also going to limit a little bit what the wingers are going to do. They're probably going to have to drop a little deeper. So that's not the kind of thing you want to be doing in the last 20 minutes of a match necessarily if you've never practiced it in training. But I mean, Greg, you make an interesting point. I think there could be some scope for looking at that in training sessions so that that's an option for Forest as and when needed.
I guess with only 2 strikers at the moment, maybe having them both on the pitch at the same time is not the way they want to go currently. But listen, we need to start carving out opportunities and trying to get the best out of our players. And yeah, we've talked extensively about Kelly Mwendo needing maybe a player alongside him. All right, we're going to wrap things up very soon. But Andrew is asking the question, which we'll put to you guys. He says, do you think that maybe today's defeat is on Sean Dyche? Should he have taken Murillo off at half-time against Malmo? In that case, he doesn't get injured. He plays today. And possibly one or both their goals don't happen. I mean, captain hindsight is always 2020. It's always easier. We are limited in terms of choices at fullback, I guess. But Malmo were pretty poor, weren't they, Mark? Yeah, maybe Andrew's got a point. What do you think? Is it on Dyche?
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it, to answer? I mean, I think Andrew's great hypothetical question is exactly that. And obviously, we don't really know to what degree other players are fit and available, how comfortable they are playing in those fullback positions. I think we all really enjoyed seeing Murillo play there, right? I think it was fun to watch him play there. He did a good job in that position. So I don't know. But certainly, one thing that isn't hypothetical is how badly we missed him today. And to Andrew's point, potentially one or both of those goals would have been cut out had Murillo had been there.
What about you, Ross? Any blame on Sean Dyche for you?
I think it's a fair case for a point made. I actually like watching Murillo at left back and maybe adds 5 million to his price tag because he kind of has parallels of what Guardiola did at Man City, like being that sort of left-sided dominant centre back, but drifting in. I think we've all kind of cried out for him maybe having a shift as that holding midfielder. So this allowed him to do some of those fun things that we'd otherwise get to see. I think hindsight is wonderful. There's a strong case that it's a yes. The yes would have been rest him, Morata would have done, or whoever would have done the job in that game. But as I say that, I also just shudder because I remember we were 2-0 up against Luton and it was logical substitutions. And then we also lost at Swansea when there were some somewhat logical substitutions. And, so we have lost to Malmo or even drawn with Malmo, heaven forbid, if they'd have gone the other way. But once we were 3-0 up, then yeah, there was a case for him to be arrested for sure.
Excellent. I kind of feel like you guys, but I enjoy Murillo playing the left back. I'd called for him to go to left back about a year and a half ago. So no, he's got the build. It makes more sense whenever we need to put Morata in there. It always made more sense to me to put Murillo at left back. He's got the better build for it, the better pace and engine and mobility. So look, he hasn't come away with a bad injury. He's felt something. They've done a scan from what Sean Dyche said and didn't see anything on the scan, but it still felt like, let's not risk it because if it goes, then it's 5, 6, 8 weeks out or even longer. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to end things there. Thank you so much for sticking with us. It's never fun to review a defeat. It was 2-0 at home to Brighton, a good Brighton side who, are sitting 5th in the Premier League now, I think. So fair play to them. Let's take a quick look at the Premier League table. So Forest still sit in 16th position on 12 points, above West Ham, who lost 2-0 at home to Liverpool today. Leeds and Burnley and Wolves all lost this game week as well. So it's unchanged as far as the bottom 5 go. Fulham in 15th have pulled slightly ahead with their 2-1 victory at Spurs. They're now on 17 points and Everton sit above them. They're on 18 points, having lost at home to Newcastle, who've gone above them now in the table. A little bit of a cluster as we look upwards. Bournemouth slipping up this weekend, fall to 11th. It is still only a handful of points that separates Forest between the top half. We're talking 6, 7 points or so. And with a lot of games now scheduled to come, with the December period about to get underway, the games are going to come thick and fast. So we really need to get our players back on the pitch because we're going to need the squad. As well as the Premier League games coming, we've got Utrecht to face as well in the Europa before we see this year out. Please do go ahead and hit like and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Please do join us on X and TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the usual socials. We would love to hear from you for our competition giveaway. One more time, we're asking you to name the player which Mark mentioned on the episode we did with him. We asked him which player from Forest history would you want on the current team, and Mark gave a very specific answer. Once again, answers on email to talkingredspod@gmail.com. All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Any closing thoughts, Mark Turner?
You forgot to put your LinkedIn handle up there.
What handle?
Your LinkedIn.
Oh, the LinkedIn. I always mention LinkedIn for some reason. Yeah, we're not on LinkedIn. We're not on LinkedIn.
I know. No, yeah, I like seeing well, I will say a couple of things about the fan base. The City Ground was quiet midweek, and again today, it came in fits and bursts. But I wonder if the nervousness that we're seeing in the terraces is being reflected on the field, or vice versa. We are in a precarious position. I don't think anyone thinks that this team is going down. But, you know, you look at the table there and we're on thin ice. So I wonder if there's a degree of nervousness around Nottingham, which is to be expected. But I will say that I like seeing, by and large, the responses from fans online, Greg, after today's result, which was essentially what you said, which is, hey-ho, they're a good Brighton team. They were on the front foot. We weren't. We kind of got our just desserts ultimately. We weren't battered. We could have turned the game around. Murillo being missing was a big deal. Let's go on to the next one. It's not the end of the world, as opposed to, you know, the the dumpster fire that we sometimes see from fans when Forest lose. The world is ending, the sky is falling, all of those things. So let's just keep perspective. We're now getting ready to play the worst team in the league, undoubtedly. A good opportunity for Forest to get 3 points on the road. Thank you very much, Mark. Ross, anything to end on?
I mean, I think just remember it's a bit of a wash this week. If we'd have lost 3-0 at Liverpool and 1-2-0 against Brighton, we'd be in the same spot. So, I mean, ultimately we got ourselves some credit in the bank. If we can get some more credit in the bank against Wolves, then it just makes the next game against Everton less of a concern. So I think we're doing fine. We'll be fine. So, yeah. And I think, actually, Mark, to your point about the fans, I actually thought they rallied a little bit about 30 minutes in today. I heard them, they were quite buoyant. And I think there was a sense that there's a responsibility on them to sort of turn the tide, and it did. And so, you know, I just love hearing the ground. I just wish I was there. Yeah, I heard that too. Like I said, it kind of ebbed and flowed, but I agree with you, Ross. I got the same impression. Defeat is never fun. We don't like losing at all, but we have to dust ourselves down. And since Sean Dyche and his staff came in, there has been a turnaround, and we have been feeling much better about the football we've been watching and the results that we've been enjoying. Certainly the Liverpool result gave us something to smile about. A little bit of a crash down to earth again today with the defeat to Brighton, but we get the chance to put it right on Wednesday night. And as Mark says, we go to the bottom side in the Premier League. Wolves have been struggling, and Forest, with Morgan Gibbs-White spearheading the attack, will be looking to get back to winning ways. We'll be back to talk about the preview to that, I think, on Tuesday. So come and join us. And in the meantime, have a very good weekend. Take care. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.